Well, some video games might be good for you.
It's me, Mario!
Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach.
Oh, that brings back memories of spending a lot of time in the spare room in my old house when I was a kid. Now, research suggests playing Super Mario 64 increases gray matter in older adults. Now, a Winnipeg local software developer wants to find out for itself if that's true. Project Whitecard Digital Inc. just got the budget to make that happen thanks to the Canada Media Fund. Now, the local company will research what effect its virtual reality game called DoVille has on the brains of adults. Khal Shariff is the CEO and founder of Project Whitecard Digital Inc. He plans to roll the game out to care homes. Bruce Bolster is collaborating with the company on this research. He's an associate professor in the Department of Psychology and coordinator of the neuroscience program at the University of Winnipeg. Welcome to the show to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great to have you here. So we'll start with you, Bruce. What do we know about how video games might affect brains of adults?
Well, there's evidence to show that, first of all, I should say that we're very interested in a structure called the hippocampus. And this is a unique brain structure that it continues to generate new neurons throughout life. And in old age, it tends to decline somewhat in volume unless you're actively engaged in physical exercise, cognitive activity, or social interaction. Okay. And it's also a structure that's particularly vulnerable and undergoes early deterioration in Alzheimer's disease.
Now, you mentioned creating neurons, but what else is it's been years since I had to memorize the parts of the brain in intro psych. What is the hippocampus responsible for?
It's responsible for two apparently different things that turn out to have a lot to do with one another. One is the ability to form cognitive maps of your environment, and the other one is episodic memory. If you were to sustain damage to both your hippocampi, you would lose the capacity to generate new memories. You would be frozen in time and unable to acquire new memories.
What elements of games are said to affect the hippocampus in adults?
What particular aspects of the games? We think it's the fact that people are moving around in a virtual space. We think it's the fact that they're interacting with an environment. We think that it's cognitively challenging and requiring them to keep track of where things are, where they went, what they did. And there's an executive aspect of what to do next.
Right. So it basically exercises that part of the brain for the two things that you said are very important things it's responsible for, mapping and new memories.
Exactly.
Khal, what happens in DoVille?
Well, it's interesting because in DoVille, we've treated this as a fun project. We wanted to have benefits that will be a legacy to Canadian companies and companies worldwide that are working with virtual reality. But because we've got an older audience, we've decided to make it fun. So we've got 3 episodes that are fully funded episodes in that the first one deals with a beach adventure, like a Cary Grant, Grace Kelly adventure in the truest sense, where you have to find who stole the Lux diamond.
Okay.
And you follow clues and you walk around and you have to get a sense of the environment in order to follow these clues, sort of sleuth-like, Cary Grant-like, figure out who's behind it all. And in the second episode, Bigfoot Mountain, that's actually a musical which takes place on a mountain. And in both the first and second episodes, there's other things you can do, like water skiing and skiing down mountains, and swimming under stream. And in the third episode, that's about dinosaurs. So I thought, why not make something really fun? And I think that we'll have music in all of them. But that one will take you back in time. You'll get to actually interact with a few dinosaurs.
So these sound like some really appealing environments to be in virtual reality, but also the task seems very important to have there.
The task is very important. We looked at, you mentioned at the top of the show, the Mario 64, or the top of the segment, and Mario 64 was actually one of the games that they studied. So in that game, you actually go around in the environment, you collect things, you collect stars, if you remember back, you collect coins, and in doing these repetitive tasks, you're building this sort of map inside your own head of those environments. So we've got all of that as driven by sort of a mystery because we assume that slightly older adults want a little bit of meat in the games that they play. So it's a big enough leap for them to start using virtual reality, but we should give them something that's engaging as well.
Bruce, if your team finds that DoVille does affect spatial skills, what impact could that have on how we use virtual reality for strengthening memory?
I should say, too, that my team includes Dr. Mandana, the research team includes Dr. Mandana Motorusta, who is a neuropsychiatrist whose clinic is at St. Boniface Hospital, and she's an associate professor of psychiatry at the Faculty of Medicine, University of Manitoba. But we're initiating this project with normal adults, but there is evidence that activity of this sort is a neuroprotective in people who are at risk for Alzheimer's disease. Okay. So one of the issues in normal aging, even if you're not in the stages of the early stages of Alzheimer's disease, is that you may have restrictions in your mobility. You may have limited access to things that are cognitively engaging. And so we think this virtual reality would be particularly useful for people who are kind of vulnerable, if you like, to cognitive decline in that way. And we think it would also be useful for people who have what's called mild cognitive impairment, which is the prodromal or early stages of Alzheimer's, because we think it could significantly delay the onset of dementia to the point where people actually need care.
Okay, so while we're here thinking that doing Sudoku is going to help us and that sort of thing, this virtual reality and these types of experiences, there's a bigger chance, it seems like, that may be able to help ward off or push off the beginning or manifestation of.
Yes, we don't think it's necessarily better than interacting with your real environment in younger life, but for people who have restricted opportunity, we think it's going to be particularly helpful.
Khal, how significant is it that a Winnipeg company signed on or signed an agreement with the Canadian or Canada Media Fund for Innovation?
I think it's very good. I think it shows that, and we've always tried in Winnipeg. Our community is smaller, but you can see this year is a big year for us. Ubisoft has moved in. Yeah. You have people like Dan Blair out there working with virtual reality quite a bit. We got very excited by virtual reality, and the fact that the Canada Media Fund has said yes to us on the strength of our proposal. They literally said, this is an underserved audience. Lots of people make content for the mainstream, and it's all very pop and so on. And I'm really glad that they appreciated that. Not only do we want to make something of high quality, but we also want to make something to serve what's typically an older audience. We think that the virtual reality experience will appeal to younger people a lot. It always does. But the fact that they've granted this innovation to Winnipeg in a time where we don't always get the grants, I think, is very good. It's again evidence that Winnipeg is on the map, and I mean, I'm happy, of course, for my team and all the new people that we're hiring, but I'm also happy for Winnipeg and for partners like OnScreen Manitoba, who encouraged us very early on to pursue this.
Before I let both of you go here, Bruce, what do you need to do, or what do you need in order to go forward with the research using DoVille?
That's a good question, Esmaila. We need to have tools to establish that this experience actually works. And one of the problems with conventional tests of memory is that you can be asked to remember pairs of words, for example, and it's not clear that that translates to performance in everyday life. So what's happening in my lab is we're using different virtual reality tools to put you into virtual environments to see how well you can actually navigate. And of course, learning your way around in space is only one aspect of memory. It doesn't help you find your car in your parking lot. It doesn't help you remember where you put your keys. That's an aspect that we call episodic memory, and it deals with things like cars and keys that move around in space-time. So we have other tests that we're developing that we describe as object-in-place tests, where we put you into an environment, ask you to pick up things, and then we're going to throw you back into the environment with those objects removed and ask you to put them back.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, and we think this is going to be very clinically useful for people with brain injury, for people with dementing conditions, to be able to predict how well they're going to be able to function in everyday life.
It's been great meeting both of you. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks so
Ismaila.
much. A pleasure.
That is
Thanks,
Khal
Ismaila.
Shariff, is the CEO and founder of Project White Card Digital Inc., and Bruce Bolster is collaborating with the company to research how DoVille might affect functions of the brain. Bolster is an associate professor in the Department of Psychology and coordinator of the neuroscience program at the University of Winnipeg. Project White Card announced today that it won the funding to create and deliver DoVille through the Canada Media Fund. DoVille is expected to be released in 2020.